You're listening to the Cash Flow Academy podcast with Andy Tanner, your source for investing made easy. Here's Andy Tanner.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Academy podcast. I'm Andy Tanner, your host. This is where investing's made simple. And each and every episode, we take a little time to congratulate you for tuning in. So many people give lip service to wanting to improve, but the fact that you're listening shows a genuineness in that pursuit, and that you value everything that entails in furthering your financial education. So we welcome you, and we also welcome the program. Special guest Charlene Walter is with us today. She is the author of her new book, Launch Your Inner Entrepreneur, 10 Mindset Shifts for Women to Take Action, Unleash Creativity and Achieve Financial Success. And her website is ownyourother.com. We'll give another website to learn more about her book. But with that, let's welcome Charlene Walters. Thanks for joining us on the Cash Flow Academy podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Andy, and thanks so much for everyone who's listening. Nice to meet you all.
This is an exciting interview for me because I'm a big fan of women being more involved in investing and entrepreneurship. One of my dearest entrepreneur friends and mentors is Kim Kiyosaki. And, of course, Robert Kiyosaki wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'm not sure that everyone realizes that Kim, in her own right, is a very powerful leader, very powerful entrepreneur, extremely successful real estate investor in her own right. And I credit Kim with much of what I've done as an entrepreneur. She's the one that has sat me down a few times over the years and said, Andy, you really need to do this, or you really get going, or you're not achieving your potential. And she's been a great mentor. Other important women in my life, my wife Marcy is an investor. And so this is something that is exciting for me to talk about, especially to honor women and talk about how they have special challenges in a world that we live in today. So this is a timely book. It's an exciting book, especially with COVID. So many women losing jobs disproportionately, and so this is going to be fantastic. So again, welcome, Charlene, and maybe begin. You're a PhD. You have tremendous academic credentials. Can you tell me a little bit about your background, and then also what helped you land in the place you are today to care about this topic of the mindset for successful women in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, definitely. So I started out undergrad as an English major because I've always loved to write. And when I graduated, I was living in Connecticut and it was cold there. So I moved to Miami and I got a job at a floral importer in Miami. And if you're familiar with the floral market, the prices kind of go up and down like penny stocks. And we were selling those flowers to wholesalers across the United States. So I really enjoyed that and really kind of developed a love of business while I was there. So I decided to go back to school and get my MBA. And when I finished that, I was sort of looking for my next opportunity, and I found a position in higher education that said must have an MBA. So I thought, why not try for that? And learned all about curriculum and working with faculty and students. Thought that was great, but eventually went back and decided I want to get a little more business experience. I went back into marketing and sales, which was my background, until eventually I had children, and I decided, I want to find a position where I can work from home while taking care of my kids, because there's that balancing act. And I started teaching for universities that I'd worked for before. And eventually, as time went on, I went on to get my PhD in marketing. And as the children got bigger, I started taking bigger positions and more in curriculum, because that really became a passion of mine. And eventually, I created a digital entrepreneurship MBA program where I was responsible for creating the class. I took a position as the vice provost of a digital entrepreneurship MBA program, and I was responsible for creating all the courses, picking the books for our students, and really helping them launch their businesses. And I love that. And around the same time, I also started mentoring some entrepreneurs through Entrepreneur Magazine's Ask an Expert platform, and really just got very engaged in the entrepreneur world. And I eventually decided that that's what I wanted to do and launch off full-time into mentoring, into doing more corporate training. And I also wrote a book for women. I sort of looked at what areas of expertise I had, where I could offer value, what was available on the market. And I felt like there wasn't a lot on entrepreneurial mindset for women. And I'm the primary breadwinner for my family as a woman. My husband passed away when my children were really young. And so I really feel a calling to help other women out there who are taking care of their families. And also, as you said, women have been more impacted by this pandemic. We had 2.2 million women leave the workforce last year. It's just unimaginable how many women. So I think entrepreneurship is a great option for them, and I'm happy to be able to help them.
This is a fantastic mission-driven project that you have, and as a mom who is raising children, solo, that's a balancing act, to be a parent and to be an entrepreneur and to be a teacher and to be an author. And so we'll have a lot to talk about that for sure, absolutely. But why was it, first of all, let's just talk about the world we live in now. Why was it disproportionate? More women have lost their jobs during the pandemic than men. Why is that?
Yeah, I think it had to do with the type of positions that they were in. The industries that they were in tend to be more impacted. And also a lot of women voluntarily left because they were so overwhelmed with homeschooling, with the additional duties they were facing. They were having a hard time balancing their schedules. So it was a number of reasons that really led to that kind of disproportion between men and women. And
you mentioned that a lot of it was homeschooling. That's been a big deal too, right? And I don't know. My school district kind of gave everyone the choice, and my older son, who would be an 8th grader, he wanted to come home and school, and his younger brother wanted to go to school. I'll tell you, I am the biggest fan homeschool ever had now. I had no idea that you could have such a rich relationship with your son or daughter as their teacher and as their educator outside of what you normally do as a parent. So I don't blame anyone who decides, hey, I want to be a teacher. But if you also have to be a breadwinner, like you said, if you're the primary breadwinner, it'd be nice to be able to do, homeschool and do everything if you could clone yourself, 4 or 5 times. So that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And entrepreneurship, enables women to have sort of more control over their schedule, which is important when they're trying to juggle a lot. They can kind of go back and forth without feeling guilty. We have time to get everything done, but I think the main thing here is flexibility, and entrepreneurship does provide a little bit greater level of flexibility in terms of schedule.
But we'll talk more about that, because sometimes people say, so Andy, I hear you own your own business. I say, not really. My business owns me most of the time. So we'll talk about that as well. But here, let's go to the subtitle of your book, because I thought this was striking. The book is Launch Your Inner Entrepreneur. The subtitle says 10 Mindset Shifts for Women to Take Action. Now, you have a college education that's profound. Very few people go all the way and get the PhD. And generally, I don't know if it's changed, but when I was in school, they focused more on how to do things. Okay, here's how to do calculus, here's how to do chemistry, here's how to do exercise physiology, here's how to do things. Once you learn how to do these things, you go out and get a job. And it really didn't lend itself to entrepreneurship, at least 30 years ago when I went to college. But as a business owner myself, the thing I've told my sons is it's not just how you do things, it's more important to have a context and a mindset for business, because entrepreneurship and investing is a totally different lens than going out and getting a job. It's leadership, it's service, it's really a different mindset. So I thought it was very interesting that here's a person with tremendous academic credentials recognizing in the subtitle of her book that the mindset shift is huge. So can you talk, just before we get into some of those 10 maybe, why mindset shift? Why was that the focus of your book in thinking differently? Why don't they just go get an MBA?
Yeah, so so much about becoming an entrepreneur, being successful at anything in life is about the way you approach it, the way you think about it, your ability to overcome setbacks, to overcome obstacles, and to keep moving forward and to kind of change your mindset to really focus on those activities that will generate income. It's really all about the way you think, you plan, you organize, and you execute, and then how resilient you are. So mindset has everything to do with your ultimate success.
I have to agree. I've told people that when you choose entrepreneurship, you're choosing really more of a path of personal development than one might think. It's not just about doing certain things to produce a certain result. Entrepreneurship and investing has a way of testing you, and it will find your weaknesses. It will absolutely root them out. And you mentioned resiliency. My gosh, what a challenge. You lose your spouse, through a very difficult circumstance. So that's great stuff. So let's talk about common mistakes or common trouble spots then. What are some of the trouble spots that are unique to female entrepreneurs? What are some of the tough things that they'll see and face that would require a book for women that they just couldn't follow the man's route?
Yeah, so a lot of the mindset shifts I talk about are more common for women, and it's not to say that men don't experience these same things, but often it's to a greater degree for women. So one of the big areas that women struggle with is confidence. And just it has a lot to do with the way we were raised. We were sort of raised to be perfect. So we're less likely to want to put ourselves front and center until we are perfect. And there's nothing perfect about being an entrepreneur and jumping into something new. You have to kind of learn as you're going a little bit, and you have to fail a lot. So that involves getting more comfortable with risk-taking, which can be more challenging, and really working on that personal brand and building your visibility. Again, women are sort of taught not to brag about their accomplishments, right? You see it in the workplace where there's those famous studies where men go for positions when they have 60% of the qualifications versus women who'll wait till they have 100%. So we've got to get more comfortable as women, getting out there, being more confident, doing what we need to do to bolster that confidence. There's also what's known as a confidence gap between men and women. So I make some suggestions for women, for example, that they can make a list of all their accomplishments, that they can remind themselves, that they can have a strategy and write down and journal about everything they've done and how far they've progressed. It's sort of just about changing the way you look at things and approach things. There are other areas that women also kind of struggle with more so in terms of their money mindset, how they think about money and their financial confidence. And just generally, there's some issues related to leadership. Although women can often be wonderful leaders and are sometimes better leaders than men, there are certain areas they're often not given as many chances or opportunities at higher levels in corporations, which can hold them back a bit. Now they're the CEO of their company and they've got to think in a different way. So just a number of different challenges that women face that are different from those faced by men. And also work-life balance, as we mentioned before, that's a huge one for women.
I think that there is a long way to go in our society for this. There's a lot of, it's almost like conversational nitroglycerin because, the gender issue about gender can be a firestorm if a person slips and says the wrong thing. So I'll try to do this the right way because there are a lot of stereotypes, and as soon as someone maybe even well-meaning says, well, I think women are better at this than men, well, you're patronizing, blah, blah, blah. And I got to tell you, I really believe that men and women aren't, I don't think that one is ever better than the other, but I do believe that they're different. I look at some of the women in my life. I had a sister who played basketball in college, went to a Final Four, and I have a cousin who was in the WNBA for probably 12, 13, 14 years. And that's a high level, those are high levels of athletics for women, and we're getting better. Title IX went a long way with stuff like that. But you're right, in the business world, we don't seem to recognize those talents and abilities. And I guess I just shouldn't call it men and women, but I look at my wife and how she's different. She can, number one, she has the ability to multitask better than I do. And I've read some studies, I don't know if they've confirmed it, that men struggle with being able to juggle a lot of things. And I'll tell you, my wife, you could throw her 10 tennis balls and somehow she'd catch them all and keep them juggled. So I think there are things about, in the nature of women. I think women chemically, when I had testicular cancer and I had my operation, my testosterone levels dropped, my estrogen levels rose, and I experienced a profound change in empathy, in love, my ability to understand others. It was chemically different for me, and it affected me. So that's only my personal experience, but I think women can tap in to how people are feeling very, very quickly. Well, men, you mentioned they don't have a problem about bragging about their own accomplishments. There's no shortage of ego in the man world. So it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I don't want to stereotype either. There are, women that can do things, differently, and it doesn't apply to everyone. But generally speaking, you know what I mean? There are some differences. But of course, there are those that stand out in certain areas too.
Yeah. So what does the pandemic mean? I think there's two ways to think about the pandemic. If you're already an entrepreneur, you might have to make some pivots and some shifts, and that's going to be for every business. If you're not yet an entrepreneur, I personally think today, this is just my opinion, maybe I'm wrong. I think today, there's never been a better time and an easier path to become an entrepreneur and serve more people worldwide. With the pandemic, the way we deal with things remotely now, and your ability to do things from a basement apartment if you had to, I really believe a person could build a multi-million-dollar business from their home. How do you feel about the COVID, the pandemic? Is it an opportunity? Is it a burden? Is it both? How do women pivot in this?
Yeah, I think it's an absolute opportunity. I think as women are looking at their careers and their situations, this can be the opportunity that they've always wanted to launch a business. They have the time to get their plan together, to research the industry that they want to enter. They have time to survey their target audience, really get everything going and work on it. And there are new opportunities. I mean, there are many opportunities that we haven't had before, and it's about finding those holes in the market and really addressing them. Now there is a lot more need, for example, for assistance for parents who are trying to juggle things with young children. I think as your children get older, it's a little easier. There's this desperate need for safe entertainment. People are bored and they want to find new ways to entertain themselves. I think there's a lot of boredom, and however we can address that. So there's a lot of opportunities for women. And even if they're thinking about formulating their plans, maybe they want to look for another job and start as a side hustle. But during their downtime, this gives them that opportunity to put their plans together and get it going.
I'm trying to do my best to think of women that were in your shoes, and I've always been taught to stay big picture, but there's a couple of details I think I'd like you to describe. Is you've just had a tremendous family tragedy, tremendously emotional. Losing a spouse or child ranks among one of the most. I mean, that's where you really have to find your resiliency, obviously. What's your day look like? What's your day look like when you have children to take care of and educate, a household to run, and all of a sudden you got to be the breadwinner? Did you have help? Did you ask for help? Was it okay? Or were you saying, no, I'm not asking for help, I'm on my own? Can you give me what a day would look like? Because I think someone listening is like, okay, how'd she go to school, get a master's, get a PhD, start a business, do all this curriculum, raise these kids, get all this done? What does that look like?
So it happened when the kids were 2 and 4, so they were very young. And at the time, it was very overwhelming. I sort of had that initial thought, like, there's no way. I was in the middle of my PhD. There's no way I'll finish the PhD. There's no way I'm going to achieve my career goals. There's no way I can raise these children on my own. I just thought, oh my God, when it happened, it was just such a shock. But as you do when you have small children and you're in charge, you just sort of have to dig deep and keep going. And so what I did is, yes, I absolutely got help when I needed it. If I was working on my PhD, I would have babysitters come a couple times a week and watch the kids, and I would take off and go to the library, go wherever to get things done. And I would just kind of juggle. And so I've been adjusting with my children as they've gotten older. And now that they're older, it's a lot better in terms of communication. We talk about, okay, what do you want to do? What are your needs? Okay, I'm working during such and such time, but I will be with you at such and such a time. And we kind of all communicate with each other. And I've really preached that. And I think that's so important to think of the people in your life. There are things that are important to everyone, and just make sure that everyone's needs are being met and that you're working around each other as a team. That's my biggest piece of advice. And I have to just become much better at being productive when I am working, trying to eliminate those distractions, looking for things that are sucking away my time, learning to delegate when I don't have time to do something. And I think that's important for all women, in asking for help and learning to say no when you don't want to do something and you don't have time to do it. It's really hard for women. For people in general, we feel guilty, and we've got to learn to just let ourselves off the hook and do those things that are important to us and that really mean something to our business, to our family, to us, or with somebody that's important to us. So really kind of to streamline things.
And this is another political firestorm. We probably shouldn't even go here, step in this. We're probably too smart to do it. But, you know, I look at the amount of money we spend and printed to help COVID people and help businesses and help this. And, you know, I'm split down the middle because, you know, if I look at someone who is in need, the empathy in my heart, you know, particularly, I look at it kind of like my kids is, you know, when my kid gets hurt or breaks a bone, I want to help. There's also times, though, where I say, hey, kid, just get your butt up and get going again, you know, depending on how I judge the severity of the injury. Right? When he's playing basketball, you know, and he goes down, most of the time it's like, hey, get your butt up. But there's been a couple times like, we got to take him to the doctor, get this thing fixed. And so in your situation, it just came to me as you're talking, why not just go to the government and say, look, this is unfair? Because there's a lot of talk about fairness, you know, and equality right now. And I believe in fairness and equality. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? And it's unfair that your husband was taken from you. And it was unfair that you had 2 kids, toddlers. It was unfair. What made you, when you're talking about mindset, what made you say, well, you know what, I'll just make my life smaller. I'll just live my life tinier. And I'll just say, look, society needs to take care of me. What was that? Did that ever enter your mind? Were there opportunities for that? I don't even know how that world works. I want to empathize with both of those feelings of, hey, let's print some money, let's raise some money, let's get these packages to help people out. But at the same time, is there an advantage to capitalism, which capitalism is really how many people can I serve and how much work can I do to help others? So talk about that difficult subject, because I really don't know how to address it. I don't have the answers for it.
So I think, you know, it depends on the individual and what their goals are and what their personality is like. And I sort of go into it in my book. And one of the big things my mom always taught me growing up is God helps those who help themselves. And I always repeat that to myself, like, okay, you're in this situation. You've got to find a way out of it. You've got to, whatever that looks like. So I think it's individual. People will react differently to situations. For me, I've always sort of been someone who takes action and just makes things happen. I'm sort of very type A. Mm-hmm. So for me, as I've been going through this and, you know, coming out of tragedy and just kind of moving forward, I'm trying to position myself in a way that makes me happy, that achieves my goals, that helps my family, and I'm raising 2 girls, so I want to set a good example for them. So I think it just depends on the individual, their background, what their personality is like, and which route they'll take. And I think, you know, assistance is good. I think if a person really needs it, I'm not an expert on the oversight of how, you know, funds are being allocated for sure. Yeah. But I think we should try to take advantage where we can, mm-hmm. if it'll help us move ourselves forward.
You know, I don't think women should be guilted into entrepreneurship. I think they should be inspired into it. If you're a woman and you're listening, you know, I think a very unhealthy way would be, well, Charlene did this, you know, everyone should be able to do it. If Charlene could do it, then everyone should. So get your butt up and get going and be an entrepreneur. I think rather the more healthy way, and I think the blessing that Charlene can be to us is one of inspiration. Because when a person is inspired, you know, that comes from the word, you know, inspire means to put breath in. It means to breathe in life. And when a person feels inspired by your story, they might get the wheels turning and say, you know what? I'm going to take a swing at this. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to see how many people I can help. And in trying to help others, maybe I lift myself in a better situation than I am right now. So let's say someone hears your story and they don't feel guilted into doing anything. Like, no, I'm inspired. Okay, she can do this. I have skills. I have power. I can do this. How do women approach financial education? Or would you recommend they do what you did? Get a BA in English, then get an MBA, and then get a PhD? Or is there other ways that they can seek the learning, the know-how, and the personal development training? Are there other avenues?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You know, a lot of it is education, and there are many ways you can find education. And a lot of it's just about how you approach things. So in terms of like financial confidence, this really has to do a lot with the mindset. You can educate yourself, but a lot of it is maybe our approach to how we view sales, right? To be an entrepreneur, we really have to get comfortable with selling. So we've got to think about any fears we have related to selling, whether it's the fear of failure, whether we are afraid to be rejected or that we're going to bug or annoy someone, and just kind of reframing our mindset. So we're really helping people. We have a product, we have a service, we have a message that's important, and we have to put it out there. And this has a lot to do with just practicing and getting your sales pitch down and understanding that. And you can look to other role models as educators. You can listen to courses. You can find a mentor. There are plenty of ways to get that additional confidence if you don't yet have it. But again, it really has to do with your attitude and just getting over your fears and really thinking about your financial background. Some women sometimes struggle with some baggage, and it's men too, from their childhood. Maybe their parents taught them that money was no good, or maybe they at one point in their life had a lot of credit card debt or did something wrong, and they're kind of carrying that with them. So they've sort of got to get over that, learn to start really loving money, and working on budgeting and bootstrapping and all of that. And again, they can learn that from any number of places. Reading books. You mentioned the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. I just recently reread that during the pandemic, and I think there's a wealth of information in there related to finances and investing and growing wealth.
It's quite a context shift. The book we're speaking about by Charlene Walters, Launch Your Inner Entrepreneur, 10 Mindset Shifts for Women to Take Action, Unleash Creativity, and Achieve Financial Success. You can find out more at launchyyourinnerentrepreneur.com and also ownyouother.com, both websites from Charlene. Just a genuine pleasure and a delight to speak with you. Especially, I just love people that are self-made. I love the story of the comeback, the resiliency. It's an inspiring thing. It's an emotional thing. And so I thank you for that. If someone is listening right now who, it could be someone who's, that maybe their marriage is intact, but finances are tight, and she's saying, you know what, I want to help out. I want to start a business. I want to help out and help win some bread. Or maybe it's someone who's been through a divorce or had a loss similar to yours. What message would you, what is the final message you would give them as we come to the end of our program? What would you say?
So there are two messages that I send to everyone, no matter who they are. The number one is you can do anything that you put your mind to. So if you're really interested in starting a business, I say go for it. You can absolutely do it. Just make those plans, work on them, stick with it. Learn to just overcome those obstacles and keep moving forward. And my second piece of advice, this is to everyone, and women in particular, is to take care of yourself. Make sure, in addition to your business and professional goals, you're also focusing on yourself, that you are getting enough sleep, that you're eating well, that you are working out, because women often put ourselves last in our to-do list. So put yourself up at the top. The better, the happier, the more well-rested you are, the better off you'll be in business, in life, with your family. So don't neglect yourself. Those are my two big pushes for everyone.
Boy, that's just awesome for men, women, children, anyone. Take care of yourself, do the best. I love your messages. You don't have to be perfect in this world. If we had to be perfect, I'd have been ruined a long, long time ago. If we
all would have.
But like you say, we get help when we help ourselves, and so that's an important message. It's funny. I've heard people say a woman's place is in the home. A woman's place is where she wants to be, and if she wants to be at home, great. And if she wants to be in the corporate world, great. And if she wants to be an entrepreneur, well, doggone it, let's celebrate that and let's applaud that in the marketplace and role. Charlene, you've been so gracious with your time. Just thank you so much for sharing your story, your message, for writing the book, launch your Inner Entrepreneur 10 Mindset Shifts for Women to Take Action, Unleash Creativity, and Achieve Financial Success. You've been listening to the Cashflow Academy podcast, and I'm your host, Andy Tanner. This is where we try to make investing simple. We thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Cashflow Academy podcast with Andy Tanner. For more information on investing made easy, go to thecashflowacademy.com.